Every decade has a look, a vibe, a story woven into the aesthetic that is so synonymous with the decade itself, it might as well be considered part of history. Nobody votes on it, nobody chooses it, yet 100 years from now, it will be the only thing anyone will ever remember. At the time, no one pays attention. A person living their everyday life will not truly get to appreciate what makes the time they live so special. It's normal after all. Yet when the memories fade and nostalgia creeps in, what makes the time so unique truly sets in. What stayed? What was just the zeitgeist? You'll never know unless you wait. The 2020s is no different. There will be an aesthetic. There will be a vibe future generations will look back on and remember us for. So the question is, what will the 2020s aesthetic be? But before we get around to answering that question, let's take a trip back in our time machine, around 70 years, all the way back to the 1950s. When you think of the 1950s, what do you picture? Something like this, right? I didn't even have to show you. The image almost seems like it's preloaded into your brain. For the women, the big swishy dresses, the tiny waist, the skirt flaring out and the poofy hair. For men, the dress pants, a tight tucked-in shirt, a nice smile and a perfectly groomed, clean-shaven face. Maybe you also think about a chrome diner, a car with those big fins, or a house with a white picket fence. Everything's clean, everything matches, everybody's smiling like somebody is watching. And here's what you need to understand about these photos. Nothing in them is an accident. Every single detail is a receipt for something that just happened to these people. Just coming out of World War II, 16 million American men had just come home, many craving normalcy after the world had almost come to an end. Look again. You can see the war written all over this photo. The shirt tucked in, the tightly combed hair, the clean-shaven face. Where have you seen that before? It's the military. Those 16 million men brought their grooming standards home with them. It wasn't an intentional fashion choice, but a uniform without the logo. For women, it was the same story. During the war, fabric was rationed, and the government regulated how much cloth could go into a skirt. So the moment a war ended, fashion swung as far the other way as it could go. Yards upon yards of fabric, skirts as big as physically possible. That swishy skirt is a status symbol. It's an abundance you can wear. Moving beyond just the fashion, what about the house with the white picket fence? Well, the suburbs were built assembly line style. Places like Levittown stamped out the same house thousands of times for veterans buying homes with government loans. A whole generation came out of the Depression and a World War and built an aesthetic that screams one thing. It's over. We're safe now. Everything is under control. But did the 50s really look like that? I wouldn't really know as I wasn't around back then, but I would assume for some people yes and some people no. And that brings us into my most important point. A tiny group of people made sure that's all you would ever see. Depictions of the 50s came from a few select places, 3 networks, a handful of magazines, and Hollywood. That was the entire pipeline. The sponsors of this entertainment wanted a specific image of a happy suburban family, and that's what they got. Now, for better or worse, these images not only describe but define what life was in the 50s. It's always important to remember, it's not about the picture, it's about who's in the frame. Now, let's take our time machine 30 years into the future. Welcome to the 1980s. Neon all around, really big hair, and I mean really big. All held together from one big bottle of hairspray. Shoulder pads so big it looks like everyone's playing football. Power suits, spandex, leg warmers, headbands, chrome, glass, pink and teal. If the 50s said everything is under control, the 80s was screaming, look at me. The 1970s happened, and for America, the 70s was a hangover. Losing in Vietnam, a president resigning in disgrace, gas lines around the block, an economy stuck in the ditch for a decade. They had to invent a new word for it, stagflation, because the old words weren't depressing enough. By the 1980s, the country was exhausted, and it elected a Hollywood actor who promised it was morning in America again. The stock market took off, and greed famously became good. Now, look at the photos again. The power suit with the shoulder pads, that's armor. For the yuppie generation that decided the only way to win was to out-earn everybody. And on women, it meant something more specific. This was the decade women entered the corporate workforce in huge numbers, and the shoulder pads were literally the male silhouette, borrowed to survive the boardroom. The spandex on the leg warmers, it came from the fitness boom. Jane Fonda's workout tapes sold millions of VHS copies and put gym clothes on people who never even went to the gym. Even the neon. After a decade of earthy tones, the brown and mustards of the 70s, the 80s flipped the palette to the loudest, most artificial colors that money could print. The 80s screamed, "We're done with the 70s." If the 50s dressed to show that the war was over, then the 80s dressed to show that losing was over. But the real reason the 80s look the way they do, and the same question as always, who is in the frame? And more importantly, who just got a camera? August 1st, 1981, MTV goes on the air. For the first time, there's a channel doing nothing but beaming looks into your living room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not a movie a month, not a TV show a week, a fire hose of style, all day, every day. Michael Jackson's red jacket, Madonna's lace gloves. Every kid in America watches the same videos and shows up to school in the same knockoffs. Fashion used to take a year to travel. MTV got it down in days. But the camera was still corporate. MTV, cable networks, movie studios. The frame may have gotten faster and louder, but there's still a handful of companies deciding who's in it. The dial had just been turned up. The only problem with this is that the country never looked like that. The average American in 1985 was not wearing a power suit or leg warmers. They were wearing regular jeans and a sweatshirt. But nobody points the camera at a sweatshirt. Once again, whoever got the most attention defined the decade. Now I know what you all are thinking. When are we going to get to the 2020s? Isn't that the whole point of the video? Well, yes, but first, we have an important pit stop to make on the way there, approximately 20 years in the future. Welcome to the early 2000s. On May 31st, 2000, tens of millions of Americans sat down and watched 16 regular people get dropped on the island and lie to each other for money. No actors, no script, yet it captivated an entire country. But hold that thought for now, because we've arrived in the early 2000s, and a lot has changed, and I'm starting to think my system is breaking down a little bit. Every stop so far, we've run the same test. We find the receipts and trace them to a historical event that might have influenced it. The tucked-in shirt was the war. The shoulder pads was Wall Street. I tried the same thing here. Low-rise jeans, frosted tips, velour tracksuits with words on the butt, trucker hats on people who never even went near a truck, bedazzled phones, tiny sunglasses, spray tans, everything in chrome. And some receipts do check out. The chrome and shine? That's .com optimism. The internet just showed up. Everyone's about to be rich. 2000 is the future. The bling, the logos, the tracksuits. That's hip-hop's takeover of American culture and bringing loud money with it. MTV Cribs, Pimp My Ride, wealth stopped whispering. But that's where there started to be a problem. The trucker hat was not a response to the war. The words on the butt did not trace back to an oil crisis. I kept on looking for the historical events behind stuff, and I couldn't find one, until I realized I was looking in the wrong place. The camera was the event. Let me explain it through one person, Paris Hilton. Ask yourself, what did she do? No hit album, no movie career, no skill, no craft, no product. She's arguably one of the most photographed women of the decade, yet there's nothing she is famous for. She's famous for being famous. And that had basically never happened before in all of human history. The fame was the reward. You did something, and then you got the camera. Paris Hilton is the moment the order flipped. Get the camera first, and it doesn't matter what you did. Now look at the outfit again. The trucker hat, the tiny dog, the velour tracksuit, that's hot. None of it is a receipt for history. All of it is a receipt for attention. The early 2000s is the first aesthetic in American history designed not to respond to the world, but to keep the camera looking. And the cameras were everywhere now. That island show Survivor, It wasn't a fluke. Within 5 years, it was the Osbournes, American Idol, The Simple Life. A whole industry realized that regular people selling themselves cost nothing and sold everything. The paparazzi went from nuisance to economy, because tabloids discovered that a photo of a celebrity looking terrible paid more than a photo of them looking good. Jackass made a fortune off men stapling themselves to things. Girls Gone Wild sold VHS tapes on infomercials at 2 a.m. For 50 years of this video, the question was, who was in frame? The 2000s changed the question. For the first time, the frame would take anybody. The only price of admission was shame. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. My prediction of what the 2020s aesthetic will be. This is an interesting question as we're a little over halfway through the decade, but I think I can convince you of some things. First, we have to cover what happened between then and now, because in 2007, something changed everything. The phone went on sale, with a camera in it, connected to the internet, and for the first time in the 2010s, we used that camera to do something very familiar. We made a commercial. Filters, brunch photos, white walls, clean lines, millennial pink. Every latte arranged, every sunset posted. Regular people curating their own 1950s, a polished version of life. With everything that didn't fit cropped out of frame. The camera finally belonged to everybody, and everybody used it to lie. And then, the 2020s happened. So let's run through the test one last time. What just happened to these people? A pandemic locked the entire planet indoors. A mob walked through the Capitol live on television. Prices went up and never came back down. An app called TikTok became the most downloaded thing on Earth. An app with one crucial difference from everything before it. Instagram showed you what your friends chose to post. TikTok showed you whatever the machine decides you can't look away from. For 70 years, this video has asked the same question. Who's holding the camera? The networks, MTV, the tabloids, then us. In the 2020s, for the first time in history, the answer is no one. The frame picks itself. An algorithm tuned to a single metric. Did you keep watching? Decides what gets shown to 8 billion people. So what does the machine look like? Not the commercial. The 2010s commercial died. The filters, the perfect feeds, it all collapsed into cringe almost overnight. The machine likes what the tabloids liked, what reality TV liked, what the paparazzi were paid 10 times more for. The machine likes worst moments, public freakouts, the mugshots, the man interviewing a homeless woman for content and a million likes. The 2000s discovered that shamelessness sells, then the 2020s handed that discovery to the machine and let it run full speed, in every pocket, all day, forever. So here's my prediction. The 2020s will be remembered as the trashy decade, and I can show you the receipts, because we've seen every piece of this before. From the 1980s, the 2020s took money worship. Look at what the frame rewards right now. Crypto kids posing on their rented jets, hustle culture guys telling you sleep is for the poor, influencers filming their Lamborghinis, their penthouses, their watch collections. That's not new, that's MTV Cribs. That's greed is good. The 80s flexed on television once a week. The 2020s flex is algorithmically delivered onto your phone every 11 seconds. From the 2000s, the 2020s took the shamelessness. And I don't mean the behavior. Look at what the kids are literally wearing. Low-rise jeans are back. Tiny sunglasses are back. Velour, bedazzling, Y2K everything. The 2020s went shopping in the exact decade that invented being famous for nothing. The first aesthetic designed to keep the camera looking got a sequel, and this time everyone owns the camera. And if you want proof these two threads fused, the 80s gold and the 2000s shamelessness, I can show you both of them standing in one man. The President of the United States is an 80s business celebrity, gold penthouse and all, who became a 2000s reality star, who won the highest office on earth by being the single most algorithmically friendly human being alive. Say whatever you want about politics, I'm talking about the aesthetic. Gold-plated, loud, impossible to look away from. The frame doesn't care if you're clapping, screaming, and no one on the planet understood that better or earlier. He isn't an accident of the 2020s, he is a receipt. But every decade has one ingredient that others didn't, and here's ours. The special craziness that will make the 2020s unmistakable in 100 years. The machine doesn't just reward trash, it burns through it. A trend used to last years, now it lasts 3 weeks. Cottagecore, mob wife, Brad Summer, micro-aesthetics rising and dying before your parents even hear about them. Brain rot became a word your teacher knows, and late in the decade, the frame crossed the last line it had left: AI. Fake images, fake voices, fake people generated by the million, content with no one in it at all. Think about what this means for the tests you've been running all video. The 50s aesthetic was a receipt for the war. The 80s, a receipt for the crash and the comeback. The 2000s, a receipt for the camera. The 2020s aesthetic is a receipt for the algorithm. And the algorithm has no memory, no shame, no editor. Gold chains and public meltdowns. Y2K jeans and AI sludge, a president live streaming and a homeless woman going viral, all of it on the same feed, all of it flattened into the same thing: content. So 100 years from now, when someone's brain preloads an image of the 2020s, the way your brain preloaded that woman in the swishy dress, what will they see? Not one outfit, they see a feed. Loud, gold, shameless, and moving too fast to focus on. The trashy decade. And here's the part I want you to remember. In 1955, somebody at least chose the lie. Some executive decided that the suburban family was the image, and the milkshakes made the frame and the ugly parts didn't. You can hate the choice, but the human being made it. Our frame has no one behind it. The commercial for the 2020s is being written right now, autonomously, by a machine whose only sponsor is your attention. And it has decided, based on billions of data points, that what humanity truly can't look away from is trash. And that's it. That's the video. That's what I think the 2020s will be. So if you like the video, make sure to comment, like, subscribe, do whatever you want, but please come back and watch some more. I love you all.